Hi, just again, I'm Steve Redmond from Skillet Design and Marketing, and I'm a partner with Nicole Fenton. We're a creative company in Burlington, Vermont, and our niche is working within the food space in Vermont. We've been working with Jan and Shirley at Vermont Chevon for quite a while now in developing their brand. And in the course of working with them, we've just had a lot of great, interesting conversations about everything that we're talking about right here. So we've propagated this presentation with information that we've gathered along that process, but just understand that it's not a definitive list of information, but it's just our way of demonstrating sort of how we would go about marketing Chevon. Jan, at the very beginning, talked about the fact that you all are sort of the push. We're the pull. We're sort of the group that would try to create the demand for this product, to create the premium perception of the product. And how we do that is we look at it as if it's a brand, because essentially it is. We're trying to create emotional connection to your product. We're trying to get people to want it. We're trying to get people to look at it a little differently. And we have a model that we use at Skillet that sort of takes us through the branding process, and we'll sort of look at that here. In order to understand how strong of an idea it is, and how strong of a brand we can be sitting on when it comes to Vermont Chevon, we want to understand the focus of the organization that's trying to create this product. We want to understand the differentiation. So we want to understand just how different is your product relative to other things that are out there. We want to look at the trends that you might be tapping into. The more trends that there are that you're tapping into, and the stronger sort of the cumulative value of those trends is, it means that your brand has more power. The communications, once we understand the focus and the differentiation and the trends, we gather all the information up, and then we develop communications that deliver all that information to the right people at the right place at the right time. So what I wanted to do is just dive a little bit more deeply into each one of these sort of areas when it comes to brand development. What is your focus? Focus is generally comprised of three different parts. It's about who you are, it's about what your purpose is, and it's about what your vision is. So who you are, well, again, fundamentally, we're a group of dairy goat farmers that are trying to create a value-added product. Fundamentally, we understand that Vermont and farming go hand in hand, so that already gets like a nice thumbs up. Everyone's behind farmers, and that's a nice sort of positive spin to the product that you're trying to push. Your purpose. The purpose is your goal that never changes. It's the long-term sort of goal that you're trying to achieve, and in this case, we're trying to create a goat meat industry by the kid surplus from dairy goat farms. The vision, on the other hand, is sort of the very first step that you're identifying that you need to accomplish in order to achieve your ultimate purpose. Hypothetically, I put it out there as like, well, our first goal, our immediate vision, is that Vermont goat meat should be in 50% of our targeted restaurants in Vermont and 25%, or I'm sorry, 75% of the restaurants in Boston and New York. It's purely hypothetical, but again, it's the immediate step that you're trying to accomplish with the product and how it connects with your ultimate purpose. The other part of the equation that we look at is your differentiation. In this case, we want to look at what's the positive differentiation that we can attribute to goat meat. Well, it's Vermont raised, and I think we can all understand, and especially since we've been working in the food industry in Vermont for a while, attribute Vermont to any kind of food product, and it's got a lot of power. It resonates really well with customers. We all talk about the Vermont brand and how it connects to dairy and baked goods and meats, and so we all understand the value that Vermont brings to the table. Goat meat is more nutritious and lower in fat, so that's also a positive differentiation. In this situation, the one key factor is that goat meat is the lowest fat relative to these right here. So anytime that you have a product that can completely own sort of a claim relative to other competitors, that's a really beneficial place to be in, because it means that no one can really encroach upon that position that you own. Goat meat has a unique taste. That's a little bit more of a subjective place to be. You can't necessarily say that everyone's going to love goat meat, but because it does have a unique flavor profile, I think somebody even mentioned that it's the new lamb, maybe not so gamey. And so the fact that you own a particular flavor profile, it at least gives you a unique sort of selling point to talk about that maybe other people can't also connect their product with. And then lastly, just in terms of more like a humanitarian sort of benefit to your product, you're trying to utilize an otherwise, I'll call it wasted resource. So for people that are concerned with, the respect of animals, and if you're raising them, at least, do something that brings some value. And so that's another aspect of what you're trying to do here that is a benefit and a strength to your brand. But the other part that we need to look at is, well, what's the negative differentiation that is going to kind of work against you a little bit, and how do we address that? Well, one of them is goat meat is not part of the traditional American diet. It's just not embedded in our culture. So, excuse me. So we've got to sort of try to create some momentum as far as why people would want to try to take this on as a new part of their diet. The other part, maybe parts 2 and 3, sort of go together, and it's more about the misconceptions of goat meat. The fact that goats will eat anything. They eat tin cans and wood and fences and things like that. But then also that goats are more of a dietary part of the third world countries. And so in that regard, people might look at that and say, well, they eat it there, but then why would we eat it here? So there's sort of maybe a misconception about goats in general. And then goats are small and cute. We've all fully embraced cows and all these other animals that we see. Just recently, I was watching a video that I think Shirley had provided us of a gentleman who owns a slaughterhouse, and he was working with cows and pigs, and he got emotional when he was talking about his job. So even with those animals, he has this connection, and we all sort of have this kind of outpouring for ultimately what's happening to these animals. But when it comes to goats, they're small and cute. It probably is another obstacle that we need to get around. And then also the perception that goat is difficult to cook. There were some articles that we read that talked about people that had tried it once, maybe didn't cook it right, or cooked it how they thought it would be traditionally cooked relative to beef. It didn't come out great. And so now the perception is that it's difficult to cook. It doesn't taste well. It's really tough to chew. So there are probably other parts of this list that we would need to address, but this sort of talks about some of the primary issues that we would need to address. Okay. Some of the trends that would be working in our favor, and a trend is sort of the outward forces that you guys can tap into that are going to help pull the brand forward. It's a Vermont product, and again, we all see credible evidence that when you can attach a product to Vermont, farm to plate, things of that nature, it's got a lot of momentum. People just immediately attribute qualities, characteristics to that product, almost kind of sight unseen. The farm to plate movement, again, it's so popular right now and so big. Anytime that you can bring another product that sort of follows the same path that other products have done in the past, you're immediately carrying on with that momentum and you're attributing it to your product. And that's another way that we can bring strength to your brand. It's good nutrition for healthier eating, although a lot of people argue that the American diet is still tanking. We can look at the fact that there's still a growing attention to be put on how do we bring healthier products to the American diet. And then just the fact that it's new and unique. And depending on how that information is put out there, anytime you come out with something new, you've at least got the first shot off the bow that generates interest. People, there's a large segment of the community where it's culinary people that will look for new things. A lot of the chefs that we've been talking to, if it's new, they want to give it a shot. They want to get it out there. And so we want to make sure that we understand all the different parts that we've talked about, the focus, the trends, the differentiation, gather all that information together, and then start to articulate the key points to the key people that will help bring the message forward and get it down to the consumer. So when it comes to communications, I'll hand the mic off to Nicole.
Thanks. A lot of people have said some interesting things that I had in my notes today, so it's been great to hear that Jan was saying this morning that we need to educate the consumers and make it accessible. Sean made a comment that I thought was great and definitely ties into championing the cause and drafting a team of influencers. Sean said that Vermont is the best place for resources and networking, and that's a lot of what has been happening, and what Shirley is absolutely a champion of is networking and getting out there on the ground level and making phone calls and actually putting the idea of Chevon into the minds of chefs and then therefore hopefully consumers. And also, I think several people said, and I think the marketplace will dictate the price, the type of meat, the restaurants that we would feel comfortable eating this type of meat in, the cuts that we might be willing to buy at City Market. So these are all the things that we start thinking about when looking at how do we market a product that is a little bit of disruptive innovation. We're really trying to work a little bit against the tide in terms of what we as American consumers are used to eating. So one of the next things that we're hopefully going to be fortunate enough to work with Vermont Chevon on is how do we develop that marketing plan? How do we take all of these pieces that Steve articulated and actually put something together that will have real tactics that we will be able to deploy to try to test this out? And I think there were some great comments, I think, from Carrie that said, you know, you could survey people, you can talk to people. Absolutely. That has got to be part of the next phase, is to determine what kind of market there is here for Chevon meat. So just a few things that we just kind of brainstormed very quickly that could be part of a communications plan to bring this to a larger market. And again, a lot of people have touched on some of these different ideas, is championing the cause. Who are the people, which Shirley could probably rattle off the top of her head, and most of which are probably in this room, to be honest with you. Who are the people that will go out there now and say, this is something that you should consider? It is Sean. It is various different people in the marketplace that are talking to chefs, that are talking to consumers. It is meat buyers at co-ops or the natural food stores and or the ethnic markets that say, yes, this is absolutely something that we believe in, and we're going to tell people why we believe in it. So we need to identify those people that will go out on behalf of the industry and talk to consumers and make them believe that this is worthy of their attention. In addition to that, taking it another step further, having a concerted effort to find a team of influencers, find and identify people that, you know, we've maybe done a cross-section of the various different channels of communication possible for, to reach out to consumers. And I'm not just thinking consumers on a retail end, I'm thinking chefs and I'm thinking buyers and various different people. Who are they that could be influential? How do we reach them? What matters to them? And so it's really on behalf of, I think, Shirley and Jan, is to get out there and make these phone calls and build these relationships, because as Sean said, this is a very easy place to do that. And we are very fortunate to be in a state that we actually can write down on a list who potentially are the influential people that need to be connected to this industry and go out there and build those relationships with them. The other thing that I always like to talk about with marketing is, especially with a product like this, where we're talking about a little bit of disruptive innovation, people need to try it. We've all talked about it. There needs to be recipes. There's articles in your binder that talk about chefs and recipes and sampling. And so we need to get it into the hands of consumers. And so there needs to be money on the back end to be able to supply that promotional budget, because, or else we'll put, you know, Vermont Chevon out of business if we're just constantly giving away their product. So there just needs to be some forethought in planning that part of our strategy is getting this product into the hands of consumers. Then how are we going to budget to be able to do that so that we are still, you know, in the long run, obviously making a profit each time we do sell. The other thing that is something that Shirley and Jan have done an absolutely amazing job. I think, I'm not sure if it was Sean or Leo that said 2 years ago, you know, we weren't really talking about this. And I have to tell you that I believe truly that Shirley is the reason that, fast forward to today, that we're talking about this, because she has been raising the visibility of Vermont goat meat in this statewide. And that has to be done. And sorry, Shirley, but you can't slow down. You got to keep going because you have to continue to raise the visibility so that any ag event, any food event, any culinary opportunity there is, Chevon is there. And that is how we will start to raise the visibility slowly. It's a commitment, not a campaign. It's a commitment, a long-term commitment to grow this industry. And I think in another 2 years, we might be having a very different conversation. That list of restaurants that Sean and Shirley rattled off will probably be even larger. And then we've all talked about this too. This is really, thinking about grassroots marketing. Get out in the communities and teach. Because if we can reach out to, and I bet every person in this room could come up with one channel of communication that we could go out to somebody to help them teach consumers on a larger basis to be able to cook Chevon. There's nutritionists. There are food educators. We're so fortunate to have so many wonderful food cooperatives in the state, that many of which have a food educator on staff that is their job to teach people how to eat well. Teach them how to cook a goat meat, incorporate recipes there, make that part of their marketing plan, because it is inherent in that organization to probably communicate healthy and nutritious eating to their customer base. So reach out to them, help them teach their people how to cook goat meat as well. And then I probably don't have to tell you, and I know that many of us are active in social media, but we are so fortunate today to have such a wonderful avenue of communication with consumers. And so I do believe that that is an area that Chevon can continue to raise the visibility, can continue to create some demand, is start working in social media to build relationships. It's already been done out there. I know Melissa and I were talking this morning about a Twitter post, and we talked about creating a hashtag for this. And we said, well, there's one out there that says, was it got goat, or is it just goat meat that we were... See, Melissa created one last night. So there's the power of social media, and hopefully more people. I know Melissa's well followed in social media, so there's a lot of people out there that now, at least hopefully, are wondering, what are we talking about today, and how might they get involved? So again, that is just, the list could go on, and our next steps, hopefully, are to create a more detailed plan and very much more tactical, get down and dirty, and actually look at how we're going to do this. But those are just some ways that we look at what are the channels of communication that seem pretty obvious that need to be done to help raise the visibility and create a demand in the marketplace.